We're here in Gundagai in New South Wales. Andrew George Scott, alias Captain Moonlight, is buried here at the local cemetery 115 years after he's hanged in Sydney in 1880. Now, why would you do that? Well, it's a very interesting story. Scott was born in Northern Ireland in the early 1840s. His father was an Anglican minister and he thought his son might be a priest. But Scott had other ideas and he went to London and studied civil engineering. But Scott's story doesn't really get started until his family migrates to New Zealand in 1861. Scott arrives here in New Zealand in the latter part of 1861 with his parents and brother Thomas. His father's working for the church here. Takes on a little province up in the North Island. His brother, Thomas, will one day become an ordained priest. But Scott starts his life here as a teacher, but not contented with that, he moves to Otago, here on the South Island, to try his luck in the gold mines. But the rising tensions of the New Zealand Wars at the end of 1864 sees Scott returned to the North Island and join the militia. He gets wounded in both legs in a spear attack, injuries that will leave him with a permanent limp. In 1867, he transfers to the Royal Engineers, much more suited to his skill base. He also gained some popularity and support from the aristocracy in Auckland, and they support his application to join the Armed Constabulary as a sub-inspector. But by the end of 1867, that application is rejected. So Scott joins the sailing ship and sails the South Pacific Islands. And he arrives and disembarks in Melbourne in April of 1868. Scott arrives here in the colony in the mid-1860s and he goes to Melbourne. He meets a Bishop Perry from the Anglican Church and he convinces Scott he should become a priest. And while he's waiting to go into the seminary, he gives him a plum roll here and Bacchus Marsh. And one of the ministers will describe him as a young warrior with a firm grip on the sword of righteousness. But while he's here, he gets implicated in some stock theft. And the police will actually have to believe him over a 15-year-old girl. Well, he's a man of the church, of course. But the Anglican diocese is not that convinced, and they give him not such a plum roll at Mount Egerton. Scott is sent here to Mount Egerton to do lay preacher and church work around the district. It's a busy gold mining town in its day, and it's a far cry from that now. When he arrives, he befriends a couple of young fellas. And Ludwig Braun, he's a young bank manager, and James Simpson, he's a school teacher. Now it appears the three of them have come up with a plan to rob the Union Bank. And the plan unfolds a bit like this. A striking man in a black crepe mask turns up at Ludwig's house, and he escorts him down to the schoolhouse at gunpoint. He makes Braun write a note in his own handwriting, and the note reads something like this. I hereby certify L.W. Braun has done everything within his power to withstand this intrusion and the taking of the money, which was done with firearms. Signed, Captain Moonlight. It's the first time we hear of this Captain Moonlight. Then he escorts Ludwig down to the bank, takes £1,000 and some gold, ties Braun up and leaves. Now Simpson goes to the schoolhouse sometime later, finds the note, goes down, finds Braun tied up and raises the alarm with police. Now, something went wrong in the plan, but I would suggest the police put a lot of pressure on Braun, and he admitted that he knew the voice of the man who was there, and he named Scott. Scott is then interviewed and searched, and they find nothing. But Scott turns it around and says it was Braun and Simpson. And it makes a lot of sense because they're the only two actually implicated in the crime. And they'll stand trial for the robbery here at Mount Egerton. And Scott, he skips town, he goes to Sydney.
nice.